Welcome back, everybody, to the channel. Today we're doing a classic album song ranking series. We're picking up where we left off about 4.5 months ago. I'm here with Sam St. John, my partner in this series. This is our 22nd edition. Special guest today is Randy Nelson. We're here to do Rod Stewart's 1971 album, Every Picture Tells a Story. Yeah, might as well get the old album up there. Great album. I don't want to tip our hand on how great because we're going to rank each song and give it a score at the end. But this is an album that reached #1 on the U.S. charts in October of 1971. It stayed there for 4 weeks. In fact, it replaced Tapestry, which held the #1 spot for 15 weeks that entire summer. So Rod Stewart knocked Tapestry off the #1 spot. And simultaneously, Maggie May was the #1 single in the United States for 5 weeks in October 71. So he had the double whammy going with the album and the single. He was all over the radio. Mix of hard rock, blues, folk. It's Rod's third album and really put him on the map as a solo artist, so to speak. He was in Faces, of course, as their lead singer. So guys, great album. Glad to have you both here. Randy, talk about the first time you heard the album or your memories of it and that type of thing.
Well, I first started out with Rod. There was a compilation called Sing It Again, Rod, and it had 4 songs from this album on that compilation. That's how I first started hearing some of that, and then I finally got the album, and it became one of my all-time favorite albums. Like you said, he does dip his toes in a bunch of different genres on this, but what really stands out to me is Rod is like the perfect rock and roll singer with that voice that I think he has. And this album just had some amazing instrumentation on it, even though he says the mandolin was played by the mandolin player in Linda's Farm. The name escapes me or something like that. But it was a guy named Ray Jackson. But yeah, I just love the instrumentation on this album and Rod's voice.
Yeah. How about you, Sam?
Well, this is again, we're kind of talking off camera. This was a fairly new album for me in its entirety. A few of the tracks I already knew from classic rock radio growing up. That they still play, religiously. I don't know a lot about Rod Stewart's solo career. I mean, I do now, but in terms of like getting into it and that sort of thing, I've always loved his voice. I've always loved that rasp that he's had. And this album, I mean, his voice is just top notch. In his younger days here, he's like Randy said, with the Faces, and the Faces are all over those early Rod Stewart albums. They're all over this album. Especially his partner in crime at the time, Ronnie Wood. So it's a well put together album. It's right up my alley. It's a lot of acoustic sound, a lot of folk with the mandolin, the fiddles, but there's also some bluesy, some gospel elements, interspersed within the record. And it's crazy, again, just how much good music there is, and only, give or plus or minus 8 tracks on the album. And I really like it. Again, the first time I heard it was actually because of Rich. He gave me the CD, I guess probably late fall when we originally were talking about doing this episode with Randy. And I listened to it the first time, loved it. I remember I was in the car driving home at night and I had time to hear the full album while I was in the car, and I loved, the whole thing all the way through. So I won't tell you what my ranking is, but it was one of those instant classics for me. So I've really enjoyed it, and it's definitely a grower for me. I like it more and more.
Very cool. All right, so as usual, we do a ranking from in this case, the 8th track down to the #1. We'll go around the horn, and at the end, we'll give the album a ranking on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the masterpiece, 1 being garbage, and everything in between. So, Randy, as our guest, you'll start first. Sam will go second. I'll go third. What do you have at number 8?
This was really hard for me to do. I knew what my top 3 were going to be, but I didn't know how the other was going to turn out. But my number 8 is going to be That's All Right / Amazing Grace, the Arthur Big Boy Crudup song. I don't really know Arthur originals. I know the Elvis version, of course.
Right.
And this whole album, though, has kind of this unique mixture of tunes about the joy of youth. And I think That's All Right kind of fits into that. although Amazing Grace is a little bit different. But I love the cool slide acoustic intro, which will play out in the segue into Amazing Grace as well. But Rod turns this into this piano-driven rocker that ends with the heartfelt Amazing Grace. And on the Amazing Grace, you have the Sam Mitchell on slide, Martin Quintenton on acoustic. And it almost sounds like a field recording, like Arthur Lomax was out there and found Rod Stewart and these guys singing on a back porch in Mississippi, which I really thought was cool. But yeah, I liked it, but it's, there's others that I like more even.
That's fair. Sam?
My last song, number 8, it's probably going to be one that Randy has a little bit higher simply because of its origins. And that's the song, I Know I'm Losing You, which, was originally a Motown Temptations song. And again, we were talking during the intro, this is one of those where the session players were the faces. And I think you can correct me, Randy, that the single essentially was originally so that was Rod Stewart and the Faces on the song when it was initially released. But then obviously they were kind of, put into the back so that this was a Rod Stewart record, solo, divorced from the Faces, as it were. But it's a good song. I mean, there's not really, I don't really consider there to be any filler on this album. I mean, it's got a nice groove to it. It's kind of got a little funk to it. Really nice driving drum sounds. You can tell that it had its roots in Motown. One of the lyrics that I wrote, as I did for most of the songs, it's all over your face. Someone's taking my place. Could it be that I'm losing you when I look into your eyes? A reflection of a face I see. Oh no, I'm losing you. I'm hurt, downhearted, and worried, girl, because that face doesn't belong to me. That's great writing. And that can be taken either in a funky way or that can be sung as a ballad. In terms of just lyrical content, those are just great lyrics. So it's a great song choice by Rod to sing this one, as he would take on R&B covers for the rest of his career. So it's number 8 this time.
Yeah, you're right. That has all the Faces are play on that one.
Yeah.
Yep. Number 8 for me is That's All Right, Amazing Grace. I had the same one Randy had. The song was written in 1946. Arthur Crudup. Elvis did it in 1954. Kind of a blues song. This is with more of a rock arrangement. I love the slide guitar on here and the piano as well. It's a good interpretation. I love an Amazing Grace. It'd be almost sacrilegious to say you don't love that song. It's just a classic, beautiful, gospel-y, good vibe kind of song. It just brings a tear to the eye too. So that's my number 8. That's All Right / Amazing Grace.
Wow.
Well, my number 7 is Seems Like a Long Time. I love the rolling drum intro into this piano ballad with some really cool guitar signatures later in the song. And I looked up the guy, it's written by a guy named Theodore Anderson, or I think it's Ted Anderson on the album, but I could not find hardly any information about this guy. I mean, this is like his one big song that a lot of people end up covering. And actually, Brewer and Shipley did this song a year before Rod did, but wow. I don't really, and it's on Tarkia, which I think I have that, but for some reason I don't remember them doing that song. But it's a really cool song. I like I said, the piano in it and the rolling drum, how it really starts out. But it's my number 7. And he does actually 5 covers on this album, but 2 of them aren't really well known. So it's in a way, it's like 3 covers, because the Dylan one that he does, Dylan didn't really release it till years later. And this one's not really that well known either.
Yep. Well, I'm going to match with Randy on my number 7. For all the same reasons. Again, it's got kind of like also got a gospel feel to it with some of the background singing on it, which I like a lot. Great background singing on the record between the members of the Faces and then some of the other studio cats that were singing with him. The lyric that I wrote that stands out: hard times are only the other side of good times, but if you ever wished hard times were gone, you know what it's like to wish good times would come, and don't it seem like a long time, seem like a long time, seem like a long time. The whole song is about that. There's always the pro to the con, the dark to the light. Every verse is a different example of that. And again, it fits right in with that whole gospel theme about, getting through the hard times to see the light. And again, great instrumentation, like Randy said. I love the background singing, and it's number 7.
I don't have a whole lot to add. It's my number 7 as well. So a hat trick. It is a nice ditty. I like the blues guitar by Ronnie Wood here. The background singing you guys mentioned. They repeat the chorus a lot. It's definitely a sing-along song. Well, you can see them in the bar kind of swaying and singing. I listened to the Brewer and Shipley version this afternoon. Very bland compared to this. It doesn't hold up. I mean, Rod nails this song. So it's very good. So number 7 for me as well.
All right. My number 6, I went back and forth with my 6 and 5, but I ended up putting this 6. And that's the Dylan cover, Tomorrow Is a Long Time. Kind of has this country feel. And I love Dick Powell's violin. But I guess if I should say it's a country feel, I should say Dick Powell's fiddle. But it's great nonetheless. And I love where it says, if tomorrow wasn't such a long time, then lonesome would mean nothing to you at all. I always like that. And got Ron Wood on pedal steel. And also some cool strum to guitar, which I get. Must be Martin Quinton doing that. And no drums on this one at all. And the violin at the end is really cool too. And then it fades out. Just perfect Dylan cover. He owns this tune. And that's my number 6.
My number 6, probably ruffle a few feathers, but again, it's not one that stands out like some of the ones before it. And that's Mandolin Wind. Yeah, it's again, like I said earlier, there's no filler on this album, and when you're only cutting it down to 8 tracks, it's hard to say that this one's this is. I think the thing that puts this one a little bit lower to me is just the stopping and the starting of the melody, because I would almost prefer it to be just all the way straight through, but there's these pauses and you think it's over and then they kick back into it again. Wonderful pedal steel, wonderful fill. Ron Wood is an incredible musician. He always gets overshadowed because he's always playing with Jeff Beck or Keith Richards. He's a lot better than just a sideman, and this album shows. But again, great vocals by Rod. I love it. Again, one of my lyrics for this is, "Oh, I never was good with romantic words, so the next few lines come really hard. Don't have much, but what I've got is yours, except of course my steel guitar. Because I know you don't play, but I'll teach you one day because I love you." That's just that's a very country line right there, and it kind of got some double meaning to it. But I really like the song. I do, and like I said, any song with a pedal steel and a fiddle is gonna be okay in my book. So Mandolin Wind.
Very good. My number 6 here is the Dylan cover, Tomorrow Is a Long Time. Randy and I are on equal footing so far, but that may change. Dylan evidently wrote this in 1963. It appears on a Greatest Hits Volume 2 in 1971. I was not as familiar with this song as I should have been. Wrote a beautiful song. The lyrics, very poetic, as you would expect. Others who have covered this include Joan Baez, Judy Collins, Chris Hillman, the Kingston Trio, and Chrissie Hynde on her tribute to Dylan maybe a year or two ago. And of all the covers, Rod's is the best, in my opinion. Of all the ones I listened to, of those 5 artists, I listened to them all today. I like Dylan's original better than Rod's because there's always something about somebody that's writing these lyrics and what they mean to them. And that's the ultimate epitome of owning a song for me. I like some of these lyrics too. I can't see my reflection in the waters, can't speak of the sounds that show no pain. I can't hear the echo of my footsteps or remember the sound of my own name. There's beauty in the silver singing river. There's beauty in the sunrise in the sky. But none of these and nothing else can touch the beauty that I remember in my true love's eyes. Just classic Dylan, sentimental kind of lyrics. And Rod's voice is in top form here with the raspiness and delivering a really wonderful song. So number 6 for me is Tomorrow Is a Long Time.
Wow. Yeah, I never got that Dylan's Greatest Hits Volume 2, so I didn't know it came out that early.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I didn't know that. But yeah, I don't know Dylan's version actually. Okay, I'm at number 5, and it's I Know I'm Losing You, the cover of the Temptations hit, like you said, where the Faces join him, and it's kind of like an all-out Faces rocker.
Yeah.
It's similar to what Rare Earth would later do with the Temptations Get Ready in some ways. But I love how it starts out. You got Ron Wood with this funky guitar intro along with Ronnie Lane's bass. And then next comes Ian McLaughlin's piano. And then Rod starts singing like he's like shot out of a cannon, like he's going to go after all these instruments. And I love that when they slow down that one part when they go, and
Yeah.
And then the piano, and then Rod goes, ooh. And then Kenny Jones comes in with this intro. Kenny Jones comes into it. And I mean, he blasts the hell out of the drums. And then there's one part where Rod says, get out, after he's hitting, all these drum things. And somehow I go, how can I rank this number 5? Because I think it's just a perfect cover. And just, like I said, it makes it a rocker.
Yep. I agree with everything you said. Sam, number 5.
Number 5, I'm going to go with the Tim Hardin cover, the final track on the album, Reason to Believe. Big hit for Rod. It's one of those that always ends up on compilations and still in his set list. Again, it was written, 5 or 6 years before the album started. I think 65 is when Hardin originally released it. So it is already pretty well established in the folk world. And it's just, again, a great closing song to an album. It's just one of those, makes you feel good kind of songs. I mean, with Rod, every time he hits, someone like you, just that whole, thing, makes it hard to live without somebody else. Someone like you makes it easy to give, never think about myself. Beautiful song, wonderful ballad. Again, instrumentation, the fiddle, everything fits this album together in that song. It's like I said, a great closing number to it. Just, like Randy said kind of earlier about the album, it's kind of an album about youth, and this is one of those just great love songs to close out the record. So it is number 5 for me.
Very nice. Number 5 for me is the title track, Every Picture Tells a Story.
Wow.
Co-written by Ronnie Wood. Definitely hard rocker. It's got that certain ferociousness where it comes out of the gate. No particular rhythm, just Rod. Heavy drums by Mickey Waller. Combination of acoustic and electric guitars here. Rollicking piano. Rod's voice is perfect on this. But there's something about and it doesn't have the traditional stanzas of lyrics and then chorus and stuff that I'm looking for. It's just sort of it's a jam, yet just spewing out lyrics and telling a story. It's a classic. I remember it used in the Almost Famous movie soundtrack as well, where they're crossing a street with traffic and that song is playing, and it's sort of like very action adventure kind of stuff. So number 5 for me, Every Picture Tells a Story.
Oh. All right. Number 4 for me is going to be Reason to Believe, the Tim Hardin cover, which I don't really know Tim Hardin's version. It was on that Sing It Again, Rod compilation that I first got when I first got into Rod Stewart. Such a beautiful song. Opens with the stately piano and then Rod's voice by itself. And then the organ comes in. Love that beginning. I love the interplay between the organ and piano in this whole song. Yeah. And there's an innocence and yearning in Rod's voice on this one. And it seems so heartfelt. And I think he kind of lost that later when he's singing like, Do You Think I'm Sexy? And those, other songs that he was doing. Also has a cool violin solo in there. And like I said, they have the interplay of the organ and the piano, and then it just stops. Rod comes in a cappella, then the piano backs him up, and then the violin, muffled drums, and it picks up again, and then fades out. I love the whole organization of the song on this one.
Right. Great one.
Number 4 for me, you all knocked it out of the gate. It's the Elvis cover, but That's All Right / Amazing Grace. I mean, that's all right. It's just one of my favorite early rockabilly tunes. Anyway, Rod does it slightly different melody in his version. Where he hits the punch is where Elvis would have gone down in his voice. So it's kind of like he's doing the opposite vocally. And you all both talked about the slide guitar, how it sounds just this bluesy, kind of cigarette infused, back room at 1 a.m. kind of thing. And they're all singing Amazing Grace after, a couple of drinks. But that slide guitar is very simple. Just, note for note. They're not trying to do anything crazy. They're not doing anything like Dwayne Allman would do. But again, it's Rod's version of That's All Right. It's much bluesier than Elvis's, no doubt. Those drums are snapping really hard in the back, and again, it's just a great cover. And I remember when I first heard the album, I was surprised because I put the album in, didn't really look at the track list, and so when it popped up, I thought, wow, that's a different way to cover That's All Right. And then it goes into Amazing Grace. I was like, wow, that's interesting too. Like it works well, and I think that's why I like it so much because I love both songs, but Rod kind of takes it and puts those two together. You never would have thought of doing that. So it made number 4 on my list.
Very good. My number 4 is one you guys both had already. I Know I'm Losing You, the Motown classic done by the Temptations in 1966, written by Norman Whitfield, Eddie Holland, and Cornelius Green. Rare Earth also did it as a cover in 1970. I like that version too. Let's face it, I like this song. And Rod really knocks it out of the park. Essentially, it's a Faces song. Randy mentioned Ronnie Wood's guitar, Ronnie Lane bass, excellent. The drums, Kenny Jones, uncredited, but very noticeable. Hard rock, blues, killer, fantastic cover. So it's going to be in the top half of my ranking here at number 4.
All right. Now to number 3, and my number 3 is Mandolin Wind. Love the mandolin and Mandolin Wind with the guy that Rod forgot who his name was. Also, Ron Wood's pedal steel is really cool in here. I love how it keeps. Sam didn't like it, but I kind of like how it just seems like it's getting ready to end, and then it just starts back up again. And then the last time they do it is when he sings the last verse, and they start back up, and then they rock out. And then Rod has those great falsetto whoops, and then I love you. But it's kind of it's kind of a heart-tugging song when you really get into the lyrics about this lover is sticking by him, even though he feels he hasn't given her the life she deserves. Someone said maybe it dealt with the person has a terminal illness, but Rod has never verified that at all. But it's a beautiful song, though.
Yeah.
Number 3 for me is the Bob Dylan cover, Tomorrow's a Long Time. And I remember when I first heard the album, I recognized the lyrics, and I'm not as familiar with the Dylan cover, but I do know it. I don't have any Dylan comps because I'm not really a comp guy. But it kind of made me think to get that album just to have this song. Again, like you said earlier, I think Rich was saying that, it was recorded, I think, originally during the freewheeling Bob Dylan sessions. And the first version, the reason I knew it is because I first heard it on the Whitmark Demos bootleg series, which was one of the more underappreciated bootleg series. It's when he was writing demos for Whitmark publications for other artists to sing. And he would just record these, really fast demos, get them out there for other artists. But again, I think he did a proper studio version in 1970. But Rod does a killer version of it. The lyric that I wrote down is, I can't see my reflection in the mirror. I can't speak the sounds that show no pain. I can't hear the echoes of my footsteps. Can't remember the sound of my own name. That's just beautiful. Again, only Bob Dylan could put lyrics like that out. And Rod does a great interpretation of it, especially since, at this time, people didn't really know the Dylan version unless you had bootleg, records from those demos. So it is number 3 for me. I absolutely love how Rod does it.
Yeah, fantastic. Number 3 for me is Reason to Believe, the Tim Hardin cover, the piano intro, followed by the organ. Randy mentioned how they play with each other. They're awesome. The violin comes in halfway through. That's beautiful. It's a great closer. All these points have been mentioned. I'm just repeating them. And the line that refrains, "Someone like you makes it hard to live without somebody else." That's the one that sticks in my mind. Sing along. Vintage Rod Stewart, one of his best songs, just happens to come up third on this album for me.
All right. Number 2. We're getting down to the nitty gritty here.
Yep.
Number 2, I have Maggie May, written with Martin Quinton. Supposed to be the B-side of Reason to Believe, but luckily DJ started flipping it over. Although I love Reason to Believe as well, but it became a number 1 hit for him. And it's a coming of age tune about a schoolboy. I guess Rod said he was 16, but in this song, it sounds like the guy's in college because he talks about going back to school.
Mm-hmm.
And he's falling for this older woman who breaks his heart. And I like how it starts out. This boom boom says, "Wake up, Maggie. I think I got something to say to you." Which, he's really upset that this lady broke his heart, but then he can't get out of it. This relationship, and I think it's got some of Rod's best singing. You got Martin Quinton's work on acoustic guitar and the beautiful mandolin work by Ray Jackson, especially at the end. And supposedly, he came up with that on the spot, and supposedly he was upset because he didn't get any songwriting credit for years. But I think there's a lot of times when, can you think of a guitar fill or something like that? And I don't think that happens that often where all of a sudden that person gets a writing credit. So I don't know, how that goes exactly on that. But the song's about youthfulness and how this incident has changed his life. He's not the same person. And then at the end, he thinks, should I go back to school? Should I become a pool hustler, or maybe join a rock and roll band? And luckily, he picked the last one there.
Yep.
A great song. My number 2.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go along with that. That's my number 2 as well. And probably the reason that Ray Jackson wanted writing credits was because he was in Lindisfarne, which weren't exactly the hit makers of the day. So,
and plus, I got forgot on the album.
Yeah, I do like Lindisfarne. I have one of their albums, Fog on the Tyne, and they're a great folky band. So he fit right into the sessions. Randy touched on everything that I was going to talk about. The whole themes and everything, and I think it was slightly based on a true story that happened to Rod in the early 60s. He said the name of the woman wasn't Maggie May, but it's pretty autobiographical about a young Rod Stewart in his late teens. And I was interested to know that it was recorded in 2 takes, which is just wild. I mean, you can hear the passion in that song, and it kind of makes sense once you know that he couldn't have kept doing that, and it had just gotten staler. I'll mention, as part of this, it's, for me, I wrote down, Henry / Maggie May. So it's got that beautiful intro of Henry, which is very like Renaissance sounding music almost. It's like you're at like the Renaissance fair. It's very medieval sounding, and it works well because it starts with that mandolin strumming and the 12-string guitar, and then again that drum that Randy was mentioning, that bop bop wake. It's a fantastic song. It's perfect for radio. It's still all over the radio. And it's probably the song that if people, said name one Rod Stewart song, they would probably say Maggie May. But Maggie May, Henry, that's my number 2.
Very good. My number 2 is Mandolin Wind. Love this song. Kind of a folky acoustic ballad with that wonderful mandolin accompaniment. Rod Stewart showing off his versatility here as a vocalist, where it starts out light, kind of breezy with the raspy voice, and then it kicks it up a few notches, in fact, and rocks out in the last minute or so, where he's singing the coldest winter in almost 14 years. It's just fantastic. It's a romantic song. I like when artists start out one way and then finish it off another. It just shows they have a lot in the tank. This is just an all-time classic for me. Mandolin Wind. Very underrated in the scheme of things. So it's my number 2.
Wow.
The big one.
Looks for our number 1. My number 1 is actually my favorite all-time Rod Stewart song. And It's every picture tells a story, and it is quite a story. And as some of my favorite drumming on any song. In fact, the rock critic Greil Marcus said Mickey Waller's drumming should have been awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for his drumming. That's what he said. But it's cool. Like he starts out, he's looking in the mirror, and his dad said, "Don't lose your head to a woman that'll spend your bread. Go out traveling." So he goes out traveling. He gets arrested in Paris, and then he's not getting enough in Rome. He ends up on the Peking ferry where he meets Shanghai Lil, who bites his neck. I don't know if this is a vampire reference or if it's just something that happens with his relationship there. But it's also got the great Maggie Bell singing backup, who was kind of like Britain's Janis Joplin. But I have one album by Maggie Bell, but she's really good. She's a really bluesy singer. And then his advice I love at the end was like, make the best out of the bad, just laugh it off, which he kind of laughs. And he goes, I didn't mean to come here anyway. It's kind of at the adventures of youth. And at the end, he's going, every picture tells a story, don't it? And then it ends with the kind of the woos and then this great piano. To me, it's a classic. And it's, like I said, my favorite Rod Stewart song.
Very nice.
Well, it's the third match for Randy and I, because it's my number one as well. Just a killer opener. And it's funny because it doesn't exactly, I won't say it doesn't fit the rest of the album, but it's definitely a different style than the predominantly folky, album that would follow after the song. I mean, it's got some, like, again, Randy said, the piano. I kind of wrote that it's almost boogie woogie piano in the background, just that tinkling kind of piano sound. It rocks all the way through. It makes you want to crank up the album as soon as it starts. And again, when you have a song that's co-written with Ronnie Wood and Rod Stewart, it's going to be pretty good. Maggie Bell, she lays out some vocals similar to, somebody like Gimme Shelter, kind of those types of just really high, shrill, but perfect vocals for the song. It's just fantastic. And, there's a bunch of great background singers on it. But the line that I love so much in this song is, my body stunk, but I kept my funk. And then he said, woo. So I think that's a great line. Again, great kind of double meaning there. But it's just a rocking song. And it's kind of a shame that he would go into like that very late 70s pop world that he would get into, and the disco scene after he can wail on a song like this. But it's a great album opener. It's a very underrated album opener, I would say. You kind of forget about it, but it's my number one as well.
Wow, you guys like that one a lot better than I. I mean, I acknowledge it, but I don't put it at that stratosphere that you do, which is cool. My number one is Maggie May. I couldn't deny it. One of the all-time best songs of the 70s in my book for the whole decade. Timeless classic. Works on every level. Number one song. It was released actually as a B-side to Reason to Believe, which was hard to believe. Radio stations began playing this instead, and it just took off. It was a monster. Ronnie Wood's guitar playing is phenomenal. I love the lyrics, the storytelling. You mentioned about the younger guy with the older woman in a relationship and getting his heart broke and stomped on. And I should get my books, but it's late September. I should collect my books and get them back to school, like move on with my life. But can't really do it because he's got that broken ticker there. But anyway, one of the best songs of the 70s and my favorite Rod Stewart song, I think, when it all comes down to it. This is what I think of when I think of Rod Stewart. Maggie May, killer. So, boy, that was fun. That was a good album to go through. Definitely a classic. Now we like to rank this on the 1 to 10 scale just for the record. And Randy, what do you have? Where are you putting it?
Well, I don't think a lot of people are going to think, God, that guy's an easy ranker. But whenever you have me on, it's because it's one of my all-time favorite albums. So what am I going to say? And this is actually in my top 20 albums of all time. And I'm going to give it a 10 because I don't think there's a weak song on there.
Yeah, well, we are doing all classic albums, so it's understandable that most of these are going to be 9s and 10s.
Yeah,
so, makes perfect sense. How about you, Sam?
Yeah, and again, like I said earlier, I've only heard this album a handful of times all the way through, so I'm not going to rank it as high because I haven't spent years with it. And I'll probably fall more in line with Rich in terms of how I rank, how I grade. And I've always said if it's not an album in my top 10, I'm not going to give it a 10. But I'm going to give this one for now. It's an 8.5. And it's like I said, it'll go up when I get more and more into this album. I don't dislike a single track on the album. So it's not like, this song needs to, hit the road. It's just, for me, it's all about timing, and I haven't had enough time with it. So that's why it's a little bit lower.
Yeah. I'm giving it a 9.5. It's almost a 10, but there's a couple songs towards the back end that, not that they're bad songs, they're just not elite songs. And that's the defining line. So a 9.5, which is a really high score for me. I'm notoriously tough on these, as we all are. But I understand, Randy. We mentioned off camera that it was in his top 15 or 16. What was it?
It was number 16 all time for me. So.
All time, not just Rod Stewart. All time, everybody. So
everybody. So
that's why we had Randy on, because he wanted to do this one.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun, guys. Thank you very much for doing this. It's good to get back in the swing of things with our series, Sam. Hopefully it won't be 4 or 5 months before we do another. We don't have any schedule right now because we're doing other things. But when we get back into it, we'll be glad to pick a great album and come back with a different guest and see how things go. So be sure to leave some comments, like, subscribe to Randy, subscribe to Sam St. John. Like and leave comments, please. It helps our video get out there to the public, to the masses. More people can see it and react to it. So for Randy and Sam, this is Rich. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks again. Bye.
Yep.